Good afternoon and welcome back to Gulfstream Park. Thank you for joining us on this Thursday afternoon on Gulfstream today. I'm Gabby Gaudette, joined by Acacia Courtney, as always, taking a look at today's 11 race program. We've got some exciting stuff coming up, but first and foremost, wanted to tell everybody we're heading out of town for the next couple of days. We'll be out of here tonight, heading to Maryland for a really inventive idea and event. The Owners Conference, Fantasy Owners Conference, is happening this weekend at Laurel Park. So that's where we'll be, and there's also 5 really nice stakes too.
As you said, 5 stakes. So if you miss watching us here at Gulfstream, you can watch us at our sister track at Maryland. A little bit of a homecoming for you, but back to the Northeast. Pretty chilly down here in Florida, all things considered, but I think maybe a little bit more cold up there. But we're really looking forward to it. Some wonderful people and some wonderful racing in Maryland, as well as you mentioned those 5 stakes on the 11 race card on Saturday. So don't forget to tune in.
So in our absence, Ron Nicoletti will be up at bat, and of course Jason Blewett will be filling in for the next couple of days. So really excited about that too. We love our friend Jason Blewett. So now looking ahead to tomorrow, though, even though we'll be out of town, we're still going to partake in Beat the Expert, that competition. So we'll show you now. I'm actually up, and a couple weeks ago, I think we had a little bit of a turn in fortune. So hopefully that continues. We keep that momentum. Make sure you go to our Facebook site at Gulfstream Park. Use that hashtag #BeatTheExpert. Make sure you get your picks in before first race post time tomorrow, which is 12:35 p.m. for your chance to win one of those cool polos that say that you beat the expert, and of course those bragging rights that we love.
Even though Gabby's going to be out of town, don't forget to tweet at her and let all of us know that you're playing. Certainly be able to follow along on those picks on the website and Facebook page as well, and then see what Ron and Jason are up to throughout the afternoon.
Exactly. I think that sounds like a good plan. And a good plan today would be looking at today's featured wagers. We'll start things off in the opener. Race 1 does kick off that 50-cent early pick 5. Acacia will have a ticket for that. And that's Rolling Super High 5 doesn't begin until the second race today. Again, you have to have 7 or more betting interests for this bet to take place. So the Rolling Super High 5 starts in race 2. Race 6 on today's card does kick off the 20-cent Rainbow 6. We have a big carryover of $550,000 today, so definitely take action in that. I have a ticket. I thought it was kind of a difficult sequence, especially when you start things off. You want to have some coverage. So we'll dive into that later on today. And race 7 does start the 50-cent late pick 5. Acacia will take a look at that as well. We are fast and firm on the turf with 11 races, 12:35 p.m. first post. Fantastic day. I would say it's good horse weather, so to speak, as it is a little bit on the chillier side, but we're really going to know what chilly is tonight when we hit Maryland at 20 degrees.
Definitely, and especially because it'll be dark out by the time we get off the plane.
Exactly. We'll take a look at the opener, though, and of course this does start that 50-cent early pick 5. Acacia, let's see your ticket.
Okay, we'll give you a look at my ticket. No single for this sequence in here, so I did still try to keep it affordable at $36. We had quite a few scratches today that will keep you apprised of throughout the day, but going 2 by 2 using 3 horses in the third and 3 in the fourth as well. I really like Otto in there to try and beat the heavy favorite of St. Louis, but going to use him protectively, as well as Brucarita. And then 2 deep in the 5th race, $36 today.
36, very affordable ticket as we kick it off. There's scratch the 6 in here, Fenerbahce, and I thought that that was a very key scratch. I thought that that horse would probably take money, as he has been the favorite in the past few starts here, Acacia, but we do head out to the main track at a mile and a 16th for this open 6250, and I think that makes the 7 Jadens best all the more intriguing here, and that's where I did land. Wanted to quickly show a stat for Jorge Navarro with his winners last out on the dirt, going a distance of ground, low-level claimers at Gulfstream. So a very specific stat. I thought that was astounding. I know it's a small sample size, but I just had to show it because when you're winning 75% of the time, 6 for 8, 88% in the money, and a positive ROI, and we're not saying that these horses have been big prices by any means. They've been good prices, and they've continued to win. I thought that was a very significant stat. Although this horse, he hasn't managed to win at the distance before, last time he did, he was going against Ravello's Boy, who was just much the best.
He certainly has been, and Ravello's Boy has just been in great form lately, and that's an awesome stat to show because even though it is a small size, it is specific for this exact move. So the stretch out in distance was a little bit of a question for me. As you said, he hasn't won at this distance out of 4 starts, but I absolutely respect him and by no means would leave him off of that pick 5, and I do think that he'll probably be the main speed, especially coming from the outside and especially with the scratch of Fenerbahce. But a horse that is not slow is to the rail, and that's who I landed on, who by contrast, he's 5 for 10 at the distance, talking about Bama Bound, now in the barn of Bernardo Lopez, and he's looking to make it 2 in a row too. I just kind of preferred him a little bit off of his last couple of races. He stays at this level. He has been successful, just like Jaden's Best. I thought it was between these 2 horses in the opener.
I did too, and that's where I kind of like your construction of the first leg of the pick 5, because Bama Bound I do like, but some things that you don't like about my top pick, I don't like about Bama Bound. In that last time out, I thought he does look like a horse that might be best on the lead or kind of in that pressing situation, and he managed to wire in kind of average fractions. And prior to that, when he won, you see the fractions at Gulfstream Park West, 25.6, 50 and change for the half. So sometimes I thought that he'd manage to get off with easy fractions. That said, this is a pretty manageable field, and I think we might have the right to start things off. We get to the second race, though. This does kick off that super high 5 wager, 5 furlongs on the turf for this open $16,000 event. And we do have a potential favorite in here, and a horse that's been in very good form lately, and that's a 6, I Will Be Free for David Brady. Now, we wanted to show you a cautionary stat with this horse, as he might go off as the favorite. With winners last out sprinting on the turf, the barn is only 2 for 21, 10%, negative ROI of 86 cents, and only 38% in the money. That said, this horse is a 4-time winner at Gulfstream, 4-time winner sprinting on the turf, and he has been in good form against this level of competition.
He certainly has, but if you scroll through his past performances, he does maybe get a win and then get kind of stuck in that second or third gear for a couple races, then get back to the winner's circle. So she's not the most consistent. She does have some speed. She was drawn outside last time, and I think that made her show even a little bit more early zip than she had been accustomed to showing. So I certainly like her. I do respect her. I just like some others in here, and I did see the same stat as well, and I think it's definitely worth noting. But a horse that I was really intrigued by is to the outside with the 8 2-step floor. And I was just looking up stats for First Off the Claim with trainer Julia Carey. And in the past 5 years, she's actually only 3 for 9, just First Off the Claim. Not necessarily something that she does that much, but it's 5 for 9 in the money, and it is an ROI of more than $3. But we did see this year what I thought was key. She's only made a couple claims so far in 2017, but here at Gulfstream, she did claim a horse named Call Her Karma, who won First Off the Claim. And this is a horse that I think has kind of been knocking on the door in her last couple of starts. I normally don't like to see a horse that just seems to consistently finish in the money, but I do think that she meets the right kind of field in here. And looking at the competition, maybe with the barn switch, and I do like to see Nick Juarez stay.
She could absolutely win this race, and I picked her 4th, but just because, you know, there's not a lot of solid ground to stand on with Julia Carey and her claims. But last time out, it almost looked like she was jumping the tracks on the turf course. We had gotten some rain, and you could see some tractor marks there, and it looked like she was kind of focusing on other things coming down the stretch. Regardless, she still put in a good performance. So she is definitely a player in here. I thought the 5 Keeker was a player. Last time out, there was a loose horse in the race, and I didn't really think it phased this mare by any means, but she just couldn't make up any ground. A Sweet Butterfly, the winner, was in the perfect kind of stalking position. So she is one who is only 1 for 9 on the turf. Her wins come far and few in between, but a good race that she can build upon last time out. And I actually had I had an opinion, but I wasn't bold enough to pick the 4, CR Destiny on top. I just think 5 furlongs might be a good distance. Overall, it looks like less distance, the better. Last time out, she made a nice middle move too, and then kind of flattened, which would suggest that maybe 5 furlongs should be okay. So I really like her at a price.
She certainly could be a good price for you here. She's never run this short before on the turf, so maybe the cut back to one turn will help her to wake up a bit today. Luca Panici aboard.
We shall see as we get to the third 6250 non-winners of 3 lifetime claiming event, 6 furlongs onto the main track. And I think you and I are both in agreement here with the 2 Gone Deep. I just couldn't really find anybody who's consistent enough to beat this class dropper.
No, you just go with the class dropper and the horse that's been finishing in the money against tougher competition. That was all that it took for me. It's a small field, and kind of you go by process of elimination, and you say, well, somebody has to win this race, so it might as well be that horse that perhaps has been the most consistent. Last time out was a well-beaten third, but it was showing a little bit of early interest, and it was against 16,000 non-winners of 3 types at Delaware. So stays on sprinting on the dirt, now in the barn of Al McIntosh, and apprentice Carlos Hernandez up.
All those things sound really good, and they sound even better when we begin to talk about the 4 Mass Approval, who is 2 for 38 on form and just has not been able to get past this non-winners of 3 condition.
No, but the reason that I included this horse in the exacta is because he does finish on the board pretty consistently. So I think that that's going to be the feather in his cap. He still gets in with the lightweight. He was 3rd last time out, 2nd prior to that, cuts back in distance to the 6 furlongs today. So I do think he could grab a share. I have no confidence in him getting the win in here today.
All right, well, we agree on the top 2 in there as we take a look at the 4th. A starter allowance, 50,000, mile and a 16th onto the turf course. And I believe we wanted to go back and show a video spotlight replay of Otto, last seen on the 18th of January, trained by Jimmy Bond.
And I wanted to show him coming out of the gate. It's a little bit hard to see with the light, but you can see that he is just kind of slow coming out of the gate, a little bit sluggish braking. He didn't really shoot out, but that seems to just kind of be his style. He never really shoots out of the gate. But this was third off, off of about a 3-month layoff, and he's at the back, and then he has a wall of horses in front of him, and he starts trying to move up the center. And he ran on pretty solidly, I thought. He was pretty wide, all things considered, kind of out in the center of the track, even when it seemed he didn't really need to be. But then he was running on behind the top 2, so I thought it was a solid performance from him. That was back in mid-January, so he's coming back pretty quickly now, given the fact that he did have a little bit of a break between his last 2 races.
And we'll show a stat to kind of solidify this type of move for the barn. On the turf, 2nd off of a layoff, going to 2 turns on the turf, 21%, a positive ROI of $2.05, and that's actually 39 horses, so a decent sample size here for Jimmy Bond. And I do think that he's got some back races that would merit a type of performance last time out that you would think he could improve 2nd off of the layoff. And I agree, kind of looks like a horse that you might have to get going a little bit sooner than, say, the quarter pole, maybe work on him a little bit earlier, because he doesn't have that big potent kick, but once he finally figures it out, he does close with good energy, and that's what I saw from him, and that's why I liked him. But you could maybe argue that there isn't a tremendous amount of pace in here, and maybe the one St. Louis could get aggressive from the rail. Before in the past he's managed to stalk the pace, but I mean, could you see a clear-cut pace setter in here?
I could not, and I don't know if St. Louis really wants to be on the lead.
No.
I do think he'll be forwardly placed. Now, his last couple of races, he went off as the favorite last time. He was beaten just by half a length. He was the beaten favorite. I thought that he probably should have won that race, and he didn't. He was 2nd prior to that. He does get reunited with Paco Lopez, sticking at this starter allowance competition, but I just still didn't have a tremendous amount of a tremendous amount of hope for him in this spot, just as you were talking about with that pace scenario. I was kind of looking at it, trying to figure out who might be the speed, and I thought it might be the 5 Appa, 3rd off the layoff for Jane Sibeli. This seems to be the only horse who's really shown a tendency to go on the lead at all before.
And it's funny you say that, because he was 5 lengths off the pace last time out, but I agree with you completely that when they did stretch him out to the mile prior to the layoff, he actually was on the lead. So maybe he's the pace setter. It's really hard to figure out. We could even see maybe the 4 Son of Oahu. He got caught behind a really, really slow pace last time out. Maybe he might get caught in the same situation, but I could maybe foresee him getting a little bit closer, coming in off of the work tab in pretty good form here. So a difficult race to maybe predict the pace scenario of, but maybe class will prevail as we get to the 5th race. At 62.50 non-winners of 3 lifetime, 7 furlongs onto the main track. And this race was really, really hindered by some key scratches, including the 3 Bellamy Torch and the 8 Run Alex Run. So beyond that, we stick to the 4 Pomera, who I thought was a speed play.
I did too, and we'll go back and show Pomera's most recent race. Now, of course, she is a 5-year-old mare that's just had 4 starts, but she was the number 6 that day, and I thought she was pretty game. She was actually dueling throughout, and I thought that she really did a lot of the dirty work up front in this race. It was really a perfect setup for Summer Whites, who did end up winning this race, but again, Pomera very game to be beaten just by a neck. She was dropping in class, 2nd off the layoff. Now she's 3rd off the bench. It was about a 10-month break, but she does look to have a lot of that speed. And what I liked is that her first race off the layoff, she didn't show the kind of speed that she had before the layoff, and last time she did. So it looks like she's coming back into form now, and that will, I think, be her best weapon in here. I liked her better with a potential favorite in Bellamy Torch. I do expect her to take a lot more money now because of the scratches, but still think she could get the job done.
And I guess the only problem that she might have to overcome is the fact that she's got speed, and we have the 9 Venezuelan Beauty to the outside, who is taking a pretty good drop in class from what she faced last time out, not necessarily 2 starts back, but she's a filly that is a potential speed play too. She could press Pomera on the front end, and it could maybe set up for maybe a long shot closer. And I thought with that, perhaps a 6 Miss Steffi could be sitting in the catbird seat, although she's going to have to make up a tremendous amount of ground in terms of where she finished last time out versus similar competition. You thought that perhaps the One Sensational Saturday could be one to pick up the pieces.
I kind of defaulted to this one, and she hasn't really finished well at all in her last couple of races, but maybe she sits a bit of a stalking trip along the rail. Miss Steffi's a curious one because she used to show a lot of speed and lately has just been kind of sluggish at the back.
That never seems to be a good sign. That is the first 5 races on today's card. The early pick 5, we're going to step aside, take a quick break, and when we come back, we'll take a look at the Rainbow 6 and the late pick 5 right after this.
At ExpressBet, we celebrate the champions that make horse racing great. That's why we provide more ways to bet from more places than ever. We've built an entire family of brands to give players more of the rewards they deserve. Give bettors the information they need to win and provide a community for horse bettors. Because the best way to support the champions of horse racing is to champion horse racing. ExpressBet. We are racing.
Welcome back to Gulfstream today. Taking a look at today's Thursday program, we have a nice carryover in that 20-cent Rainbow 6, over $550,000 in the sequence today. So I think you can maybe spend a few more bucks to play this ticket, and that's exactly what I did. We'll show you the sequence that I did come up with, and I couldn't find a single. I thought it was very difficult. I was trying to single on a horse in the 10th race, our featured allowance today, but didn't quite have a lot of confidence there. I do like El Kabir later today, though. So using the 3 horses in the first leg, 3 by 3 by 3 by 3, and then capping it off with the 3-5 and the 1-5 in today's finale. I could have used even more horses in the final race, but It is what it is, $64.80. And wanted to have some coverage in the first leg of the sequence, Acacia. And we will start with things here, going back and watching the 6 Cinder last time out.
We will. This is actually 2 starts back for Cinder. I wanted to show this race for her because it was against condition claimers while she faced starter allowance competition last time out. So I think that this is probably the best spot to watch her in here. She just had no place to go at the top of the stretch. She had to go outside. She was too late and beaten by the even money favorite, but she is the number 6. Now you can see her shift outside, and she's very, very wide in the stretch, trying to close on. And as I said, she just ended up getting there too late. She was beaten by Gulfstream that day. And then they stepped her up off of that performance into Starter Allowance Company, where she ran into a really nice runner from Todd Pletcher and Triquita, and maybe just was a little bit outclassed.
That could be it. It was a pretty dismal performance, so last time out. She actually has been capable of being maybe effective against tougher competition in the past, but she does seem like a horse that sometimes goes in and out of form, so maybe she'll be sitting on a big performance today. I did respect her. I used her in 3rd. The one Kate missed was where I did land last time out. She drew post 6, but although it doesn't seem like a big deal, she did lose a little bit of, or a lot of ground going into the turn. Today, she does draw the rail post position. Jose Ortiz is in the saddle. She's always been one that's been hindered by trouble occasionally, but I thought the rail post could get her closer to the pace and maybe kind of avoid some of those troubles.
Maybe it will help her out. She does come out of the same race as Magician's Vanity, and it kind of looks like these two do kind of run up against each other quite a few times, and they both kind of seem to find trouble. Now, the downside about Magician's Vanity, of course, is that she is just 1 for 33 on form, but I do think last time out, they took the blinkers off for her. She's 2nd off the claim when being claimed back by trainer Mike Trombetta, so he did end up claiming her back. I used her in the exacta. I thought that she definitely has the ability to hit the board, as she's actually had 15 of those races be in the money finishes, even though it's only the 1 win. So I ended up going with her over Kate Miss, but I agree with you. Looks like both of them kind of have to figure out how to stay out of trouble.
I've given up on Magician's Vanity. I think I picked her twice, and probably more than that, actually, when she was running at Laurel. So she is 0 for 25 on the turf. So that's kind of where I have tried to avoid her. But the 8 Stella Street, she's coming off of a big layoff. We haven't seen her since the summer at Saratoga, and she was formful against Allowance Company, but she does kind of have spotty form. I don't really think that this is a suspicious drop, because prior to the layoff, she was facing $40,000 claimers.
She was. They had actually dropped her from Allowance Company in for the tag right before the layoff. It's been about 7 months since we've seen her. Actually, her only win came in 2014 overseas in Ireland, so she's yet to get that elusive U.S. victory yet either, but they'll take the blinkers off today, and it is Chad Brown, Joel Rosario up.
Let's turn the page to the 7th and talk about the pick 5.5 furlongs on the main track for this maiden claiming event. And we have a lot of scratches with the 1 Fiore, the 3 Member, and the 8 Overdriven Cat. So I thought that really kind of put a damper on this race. Acacia, how did you kind of restructure your ticket?
Well, I definitely wanted some coverage in the first leg here, especially with those scratches. So I'm going to use 4 horses, because just after that, I had no idea really what to do with this race. And this is kind of one of those races where things can pop up and surprise you. So 4 in the first leg to get me off the ground, then 2 by 3. I also like El Kabir later on in the 10th, but I am going to protect myself using Jonigal Moon, and then 2 deep in the finale for $48.
Okay, $48. Pretty affordable there.
I tried.
Yeah. Well, I agree with you that you want to have several horses. In the pick 6, I actually just stuck with the 4, 5, and 6, but I could definitely see the 2 being competitive in here. Poopsie doopsie, you're going to give one more shot too.
One more shot, and I scratched into this filly. I think maybe the cutback in distance in here will help her a bit. She's got some speed. She does have a scratch of another speed horse and Member right next to her, so maybe that'll help her out a bit. We do probably see some speed speed from Lady Greatness and from Poda to the outside, but I don't think that either of those fillies have really been able to sustain that speed very well. So I will go with Poopsie Doopsie again, apprentice Nikki Figueroa in the saddle, who's been winning quite a few races here in the championship meet. So showed that speed last time. As I said, cut back to the 5.5 furlongs today.
Yeah, Nikki Figueroa is definitely one to watch out for. Don't know, well, definitely one to watch out for, especially when you get to these lower level maiden claimers. You always, in my opinion, I always think it's an advantage to have a weight allowance, not really mattering what distance you're going. So that obviously helps. I went with a horse who I thought might potentially wire the field. This horse is not slow, and that's the 6. I'm Thirsty. Gets in with a lightweight of 108 pounds with a 10-pound apprentice. Jorge Navarro, I just kind of stuck between these couple of horses and even the 5 Grand Edge, who is taking a big drop in class from maiden $20,000 company last time out. Let's get to the 8th race, so another maiden claiming event. But we head out to the turf at 7.5 furlongs in for that $35,000 tag. And I think that the more legitimate contenders are drawn more towards the outside, one of them being the 10 Oscarific.
I do too. I do expect the 12 Fact Check to take money for Todd Pletcher, but we both opt for Oscarific, and we'll go back and show his last performance on February 9th. This is when he did finish second. We'll show him coming out of the break. He kind of did take a little bit of a right turn coming out of the break. There was also some bumping coming into him. So if you look at the short comment, bumped at the start, wanted to kind of highlight what exactly happened there. But then the winner ended up wiring the field that day. And you can see he was the 6-5 horse that day for Wesley Ward. And I thought that Oscarific was a little bit green in the stretch, and he was kind of stuck in a weird chasing spot. But I do think that he showed a lot of promise. He did end up finishing second with that wire-to-wire winner, and you can see that Diddley's just pulling away from the rest of the field. Certainly much the best. But Oscarific keeping on pretty strong.
He did, and you know, I think 5 furlongs might not be his distance just because it seemed like it took him a while to really find his stride. So now going from 5 furlongs to the 2-turn 7.5 furlongs today, I think can only improve him. And on top of that, I know we've always said that outside post positions are very difficult to win from when you're going 7.5 for the mile on the turf here. But we've started to see at least more frequently recently than the early part of the meet, horses are starting to win from the outside post positions.
Absolutely. Just yesterday we saw Queen de Valle, who's been just in exceptional form now, 8 out of 10 lifetime, but she won from a far outside post yesterday. And we've seen that it hasn't been as tough as perhaps earlier on in the meet, or just what statistics might show. So certainly respecting Oscarific. And I alluded to Fact Check, who also stretches out to the 2 turns in here. Now, I thought this was interesting. He's by, yes, it's true. The dam did break her maiden going long on the turf. So interesting to see how he does with that at distance.
And I do think that the key for him is probably the break, because sometimes he's been known to maybe break a little funny in the afternoons, and he's also a horse that doesn't necessarily look like he likes to pass horses. So with an outside post position, 2 turns, all of that said, I'm hoping we see an aggressive ride by Luis Saez to kind of get him into the game and maybe make the lead from that outside post position. Other than that, Acacia, I thought the 6 Marina Mojo was an interesting one. He made up a lot of ground last time out, and I remember seeing this horse first time out thinking that he's really going to like the turf. Just Eric Guillot just trying to get that elusive win so far at the meet.
He is unfortunately 0 for 21 so far, but I thought that he really did take to the turf. It was a much better turf race last time versus his 2 dirt starts. Classic Move was the horse dropping in class for Shug McGahee, and one that had kind of been all over the place prior to that seemed to take a mental step forward as well. I also threw on the 5 Union Riches, now a gelding, coming off of a big layoff for George Weaver, but a significant drop in class from maiden special weight.
It was a huge drop in class. Blame Will, Always Dreaming. We saw the way that Always Dreaming ran here last weekend, I think it was. Yes,
Blew the field away.
Yeah. Or 2 weekends, I don't know.
2, I think.
2 weekends ago. They're all blending together nowadays. But an interesting field there in the 8th as we take a look at the 9th race. This is a starter allowance optional claiming event, a mile onto the turf. And we'll take a look at the field. And Erasmo's Dream last time out, this horse has been really in fantastic form. And I think the tough thing about this race, first and foremost, is that there are a lot of horses in here that have been running against each other, winning and losing against each other. And there's also 2 Sage of Monticellos that you really have to pay attention to, because there were 2 versions of the race on President's Day.
Yes, and just looking at our top selections, Grey Dude and Erasmus Dream do not come out of the same race. They did not face each other on President's Day, even though it is the same title. So that is a good point to clear up early. But I did think that Erasmus Dream last time out ran a really good race. I think that he probably was aided by the fact that Sir Sebastian, who was the favorite in that race, looked like he was going to be quite a big part of the pace scenario, just didn't turn out to show any speed, got stuck in a bunch of traffic. So it really could have flattered Erasmus Dream and help him to get that win last time. But I thought prior to that, he'd been in very good form too. And that's what I like about him, is that he has been consistent. Armando de la Cerda having an excellent meet. And as I said, maybe in his past couple of starts prior to that, he was beaten by a couple other horses in this field. But it looks like he's a horse that's just been moving in the right direction and seems to have found his stride.
And it's funny because those 2 different races I thought were run in 2 very different ways, because the race that Erasmus Dream comes out of, as you said, the pace scenario was a little fishy, and I thought that the pace scenario might have guided Erasmus Dream to win like that. That said, he obviously has races that would consider him a winner against this field, whereas Grey Dude, different pace scenario in that we saw the winner go wire to wire. He actually got loose on the lead, and then Grey Dude was having a difficult time trying to make up the ground. I also think that he will be benefited by the inside post position, and he'll be benefited by added distance, which maybe 7.5 is just a touch too short. He looks better at the mile and a 16th. So that's where I kind of liked him. And I just thought there was a lot going on. You actually like the one Grey Dude as well.
I do, and certainly like to see John Velasquez in the saddle. And this was a horse, he was very good, 2 for 2 on the turf before he did try that Sage of Monticello last time out. So I agree, you can give him a little bit of a pass there. But a horse I'm really intrigued by is the 5 Major Key, who I remember loving in his first start on turf. Got him at a bit of a price that day. And then in his most recent turf start against $50,000 starter optional claiming types, he was a big price, more than 22 to 1 that day. And he did end up getting the win. They tried him at OBS last time on the synthetic. I don't think he really took to that at all. Maybe he was also a bit outclassed, but he's 2 for 2 on the turf, and he really has shown himself against some solid competition.
Yeah, and I agree with you. His 2 turf races would probably make him pretty competitive against this company, which is why I used him in second. But you know, why change what is actually going well? And sometimes, you know, he obviously took a liking to the turf, then they ran him on the dirt again, and then the turf again, and then the synthetic. So that's where his form is a little bit tricky, I would say, but he definitely could win this race at a pretty decent price. Do take note, with those scratches, the 13 Albert Charles does draw in off the AE, and Jose Lescano will ride. As we get to the feature race of the day, race 10, an allowance optional claimer, 7 furlongs on the main track. And this race is kind of similar to yesterday when we saw Rally Cry and Adulator come off of layoffs. One of them, the 3 El Kabir, we haven't seen since tackling Grade 1 Company in the Whitney at Saratoga in the beginning of August. So perhaps a lot has changed since then. Obviously, this is first time in the barn of Bill Mott, but we wanted to show a stat here for Bill Mott with 180-day plus layoffs sprinting on the dirt. I was surprised by this stat. 11 for 54, 20%, $2.49 and 39% in the money. The barn, although we always consider one to be more on the patient side in terms of layoffs or even developing maidens, this is, I think, a very, very solid stat.
It absolutely is. And there's a couple reasons that I preferred El Kabir over Donegal Moon, and we'll get to Donegal Moon in a second. But the biggest thing I thought was the distance, is that I like El Kabir at this distance. He's a 2-time winner at the 7 furlongs. He was stretched out to those more classic distances, but I think some of his stronger races have actually come a bit shorter. And I do think that he's going to be sharp off the layoff, as we just saw on that stat. He's been firing bullets at Payson Park on the work tab, getting ready for his return. So I definitely think, obviously, there are quite a few classy horses in here, namely El Kabir. Riker and Donegal Moon, but I think that he certainly fits in this group.
And also, you have to consider the competition, right? I mean, this is a horse, El Kabir. He was facing Frosted in the Whitney. You see Braidster in there, Opportunity, Run Happy in the Malibu. These are really solid, classy horses in here, and he's good at the distance. Whereas Donegal Moon, he's making his 4-year-old seasonal debut. He was beaten soundly in the Bluegrass. He came back to be beaten in the Sir Barton, which was just an average race. I will say he was caught in a very strong pace in that particular pace scenario. But if you're kind of handicapping this from a class perspective, wouldn't you say that El Kabir might be a step or two above?
I absolutely would, but we'll go back and show Donegal Moon's last performance in the Pegasus and show his race. Now, keep in mind, this was going the mile and a 16th. This is at Monmouth. He's the number 6, but he was pretty far back early, and he moved along the rail. He did tip out and go about 3 wide. Unified was the favorite in this race, and he didn't deliver. He then took a big layoff, and then we saw him come back here at Gulfstream and win the Grade 3 Gulfstream Park Sprint with a 101 Beyer speed figure. So maybe Donegal Moon didn't have to deal with the heavy favorite in a classy horse like Unified in there. He managed to get out the victory. He's been working very well since, but I absolutely agree with you. I think that El Kabir, maybe you can say, well, he's been more soundly beaten lengthwise in some of his recent races, but he's been running against the top horses in the country.
And we'll see if Donegal Moon shows kind of that gate speed coming out of the gate, because going a mile and a 16th in the Pegasus, as we saw, he kind of took back off the pace. It was pretty solid fractions in front of him. And of course, 2 starts back in the Sir Barton, he was part of that very contentious pace scenario. So I'm interested to see how it kind of shakes out. But Shaft of Light is on his best day, he's the fastest early horse. So that said, he's a 2-time winner at 7 furlongs. The past 2 starts, for whatever reason, we've been predicting him to be on the lead, and he just has not been firing early. And I think it's been hugely detrimental to him, because he's a horse that just does better on the lead.
And I totally agree with that. It was especially evident a couple starts back in the Grade 3 Mr. Prospector, because there were 2 Navarro entries in there with Delta Bluesman. The plan was for Shaft of Light to go and Delta Bluesman to take back a little bit. That didn't happen because Shaft of Light did not go. He hasn't been breaking sharply in his last couple. He's incredibly consistent. Now, talking about class, he's certainly not at the same level perhaps as those 2 other horses that we were talking about, but he does have the speed if he can get out sharply. We've seen Piloting show quite a bit of speed. And we've also seen Riker show speed on the synthetic primarily. So that is where I do kind of wonder what he will do. He did show a lot of early speed in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile back in 2015 before the layoff at Keeneland. And lately he's kind of been inconsistent about how he gets out of the gate.
Yes, exactly. And Riker, I love the idea of cutting Riker back in distance. He just looks more of a one-turn horse, but he hasn't shown enough on the dirt to make me think that he can beat horses like El Kabir or Donegal Moon. Obviously, he's very good on the synthetic. I just don't always know if that translates. I mean, they even tried him on the turf before trying to find a preferred surface. So I think he's kind of been a little bit of a tricky horse to try to figure out. But that is an excellent feature race of the day as we get to the nightcap. A maiden $20,000 race, 7.5 furlongs onto the turf. And the 3, Looking Cozy, 2nd-time starter for Terry Pompey, was who you went to.
No, I went to the 5.
Sorry.
I think that was
Last
picks from
race.
The last race. All good. I was going to say,
Well,
I don't know where I was sleeping that night.
I was really looking at Looking Cozy at a little bit of a shot here, but Terry Pompey, 2nd starters on the turf, not always the best. But that horse actually did come out of some troubled trips. There are a couple 2nd-time starters today that come out of troubled trips. So maybe that's a good omen here, but the 5, Blame the Law was where you did.
Maybe that's your hunch bet of the
there
day.
we go.
But Blame the Law, class dropper in here, going from maiden special weight to maiden 20,000. Was pretty slow out of the gate last time out and just didn't really run a step. But I remember being a little bit intrigued by this filly earlier on. Now she is trying the turf for the first time. It's that very aggressive drop-in class. Corey Lannery still going to be in the saddle, and Just looking at stats for the barn, perhaps maiden special weight to maiden claiming in, and even first time on the turf is not the strongest, but just thinking in this field, the class might help her out.
Definitely so, and you obviously see the pedigree by Blame. There's a lot of turf influence there, a lot of turf influence on the bottom side too. The mare was a stakes winner on the turf, kin to another turf winner, so good pedigree there. The one Little Queen I thought could be a speed play in here if nobody else shows up. There's not a lot of speed, I don't think. There are a couple of sprinters stretching out to 2 turns on the turf today, but I think from the rail post position, Little Queen should have the advantage.
Absolutely, and as you said, she'll probably send from the rail. Again, gets in with the lightweight with 7-pound apprentice Nikki Figueroa. She also cuts back in distance a bit. Her last 2 races were a mile and a 16th and a mile and an 1/8. So I do think that she is one who has that early speed. It kind of took her a couple starts at the start of her career to show that speed, but I do think that'll be her game today.
Well, we land on the top 2 there, so hopefully they can close out the card because that's all I landed on in pick 6.
Me too.
Once again, we do have a nice carryover in the pick 6 of $550,000. That starts in the 6th race on this 11-race program. We're going to step aside, and Pete Aiello will be up next with those scratches and changes. Good luck.
We have to take care of these horses that, give us so much joy.
Being a